North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. We report the news here honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. In other words, we de-propagandize America's propaganda disguised as news. I make commentary. That is not news. That's just my opinion, just as valuable as anybody else's. And that includes you, of course, which is why we debate. So if you have any discrepancy or difficulty or discussion regarding any of the things we do on this broadcast, please, by all means, jump into the conversation. Two ways to do it. You can join us on the chat room. John Beal has just won the Wells Report Derby for today. Yvonne Field right behind him. And good to have both of you here. And the chat room will be going on all day long. And indeed, I interact with it a lot. You can also call me on the telephone. Telephone sitting right there. Operator is standing by. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. One of the most amazing things in American journalism is not what you would call strict American journalism. What we are seeing is an American patriot, or maybe more accurately, a human patriot, standing for the things that made this nation the greatest in the history of the human endeavor. And that would be the Constitution and Bill of Rights of the United States of America. And the Bill of Rights leads with something called the First Amendment, guaranteeing free speech and freedom of religion and a free press. The press, long ago, abandoned the truth and chose political sides. And it really doesn't make any difference what media you follow. They have chosen political sides. All bias is bad. It doesn't make any difference whether you happen to agree with one particular news source bias. All bias is bad. What you need is information. It's what we endeavor to do here. The story has thus hinged on Elon Musk, his single-handed purchase of Twitter, a social media platform that was guilty of violating the First Amendment of the Constitution, and yet somehow able to do business in the United States of America. See, this is something else that I've been bringing up time and time again. I believe that if you have a corporation doing business in the United States, you should be constitutionally compliant, which means that you should follow the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Aside from just being really, really good human rights or human relations policies, human resources policies, the Constitution protects your business from a lot of very bad things that could happen. Like, for example, a whole bunch of people deciding that they are more important than people being able to discuss whatever they choose to discuss in what is the international town square. And certainly the national one. Twitter walked away from the Constitution of the United States. They lost their toy. They lost their power. Elon Musk noted that there was real problems at Twitter and simply purchased it. And now there are even bigger problems at Twitter that go far beyond the hallways of that particular organization and right into the hallways of your house. Bari Weiss used to work at the New York Times. She walked away. She walked away because she was tired of dealing with a propaganda mill. And that's essentially what she called the New York Times. She has her own news organization. As a matter of fact, I applied to 2 jobs they have open yesterday. I doubt that I'll get those jobs, but you never know. But Bari Weiss is somebody that also knows what journalism is supposed to be. And she is working with Twitter on this project that is essentially called the Twitter Files. The first Twitter files were interfered with by a guy named James Baker. who has been at the epicenter, I dare say, the FBI's fixer when it comes to things anti-Trump and when it comes to things anti whatever the agenda of the Biden administration happens to be. This guy is a serious player. And what he did was, in the first tranche of these pieces of information called the Twitter files, he basically went through and sanitized some of them. Did he delete some of those as well? We don't know. But what we have now is we have Matt Taibbi, who did the first set. Now Bari Weiss, formerly of the New York Times, does set number 2. I have the entire thread here in front of me. I'm going to report it to you because it's the right thing to do. So this thread, these tweets come out with various points, and they're numbered. Number 1, a new hashtag Twitter Files investigation reveals that teams of Twitter employees built blacklists, prevent disfavored tweets from trending, and actively limit the visibility of entire accounts or even trending topics, all in secret, without informing users. Number 2, Twitter once had a mission, quote, to give everyone the power to create and share ideas and information instantly without barriers, unquote. Along the way, barriers nevertheless were erected. As an aside, the political power that is intrinsic in both free speech and the censoring of free speech was irresistible to these people. Number 3, this regarding these barriers. Take number 3. Take, for example, Stanford's Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who argued that COVID lockdowns would harm children. Twitter secretly placed him on a trends blacklist, which prevented his tweets from trending. Number 4, or consider the popular right-wing talk show host Dan Bongino, who at one point was slapped with a, quote, search blacklist. In other words, you couldn't find him if you were looking for him. Number 5, Twitter set the account of conservative activist Charlie Kirk to, quote, do not amplify. Number 6, Twitter denied that it did such things. In 2008, Twitter's Vijaya Gadde, then the head of legal policy and trust, and Kayvon Biekpour, who was the head of product, said, quote, we do not shadow ban. They added, and we certainly don't shadow ban based on political viewpoints or ideology, unquote. They lied. Bari Weiss, what many people call shadow banning, Twitter executives and employees called visibility filtering, or VF. Multiple high-level sources confirmed its meaning. Number 8, think about visibility filtering as a way for us to suppress what people see to different levels. It's a very powerful tool. That's a quote from one senior Twitter employee. Number 9, VF. That refers to Twitter's control over visibility. It used VF to block searches of individual users, to limit the scope of a particular tweet's discoverability, to block select users' posts from ever appearing on the trending page, and from inclusion in hashtag searches. Number 10, all of this done without users' knowledge. Number 11, we control visibility quite a bit, and we control the amplification of your content quite a bit. And normal people do not know how much we do, one Twitter engineer told us. 2 additional Twitter employees have confirmed it. Number 12, the group that decided whether to limit the reach of certain users was the Strategic Response Team, Global Escalation Team, or SRTGET. It often handled up to 200 cases every day. Number 13, but there existed a level beyond official ticketing, beyond the rank and file moderators following the company's policy on paper. That is the site integrity, the site integrity policy escalation support, or SIP-PES. Number 14, the secret group included the head of legal policy and trust, Vijaya Gadde, and the global head of trust and safety, Yoel Roth, subsequent CEOs Jack Dorsey and Parag Agrawal and others. In other words, when Jack Dorsey said he didn't know anything about this, he was lying. Boy, there sure is a lot of lying going on. Number 15. This is where the biggest, most politically sensitive decisions got made. Think high follower account, controversial, another Twitter employee told us. For these, quote, there would be no ticket or anything, unquote. Number 16. One of the accounts that rose to this level of scrutiny was Libs of TikTok, an account that was on the Trends blacklist and was designated as do not take action or user without consulting with SIPPES. Number 17, the account, which Chaya Raichik began in November of 2020 and now boasts over 1.4 million followers, was subject to 6 suspensions in 2022 alone. Raichik says each time Raichik was blocked from posting for as long as a week. Number 18. Twitter reportedly informed Raichik that she had been suspended for violating Twitter's policy against, quote, hateful conduct. Number 19. But an internal SIPPES memo from October of 2022, after her 7th suspension, the committee acknowledged that, quote, LTT, Libs of TikTok, had not directly engaged in behavior violative of the hateful conduct policy. See here. And then what it does is it lists what the policy is. Number 20, the committee justified her suspensions internally by claiming her posts encouraged online harassment of hospitals and medical providers by insinuating that, quote, gender-affirming healthcare is equivalent to child abuse or grooming, unquote. Number 21, compare this to what happened when Raichik herself was doxxed in November 21st, 2022. A photo of her home with address was posted in a tweet that garnered more than 10,000 likes. Number 22, when Raichik told Twitter that her address had been disseminated, she says Twitter support responded with this message, quote, we reviewed the reported content. We didn't find it to be in violation of Twitter rules, unquote. No action was taken. The doxing Twitter is still up. Whoa. Number 23, in internal Slack messages, Twitter employees spoke of using technicalities to restrict the visibility of tweets and subjects. Here's Yoel Roth, Twitter's then global head of trust and safety, in a direct message to colleagues in early 2021. SI has used technically spam enforcements as a way to solve. Let me see if I can get this up here. A lot of times, SI has used technicality spam enforcements as a way to solve problems created by safety under enforcing their policies, which again isn't a problem per se, but it keeps us from addressing the root cause of the issue, which is that our safety policies need some attention. In other words, the censorship wasn't quite comprehensive enough. This is the second tranche of information coming from Twitter, the Twitter files. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. This is simply monstrous. There's more coming up next. Stay put. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells, going over the Twitter Files Dump 2.0. This from Barry White. Barry White. I did it again. Barry Weiss. Matt Taibbi did the first one. And Taibbi, I'm sorry. Matt Taibbi, I screwed up everybody's name. He did the first one. Barry Weiss is doing the second one. So want to say hello to some people on the chat room. Eddie Jones has joined us. He says that 230, that's section 230 of the, I believe it's the Telecom Act of 1996, has to go. That shields social media from liability. Poker Monkey says there's no doubt the left for many years will lie, cheat, and steal to win elections and maintain power. They want illegal aliens to vote. They vote for dead people and the elderly in nursing homes, etc., etc. Martha Brothers takes me to task for saying that they lied. Of course they lied. Duh. Well, now we have proof. The left adjusts to new technologies like Twitter, Google, and Facebook to censor the right and use it to their advantage. Newspapers and TV news have been using it for years. It's true. This is monstrous and insidious, and it's pervasive. It's everywhere. And it's one of the reasons why I do this broadcast, because I wasn't going to do this any longer. But I started doing that. I made that decision on 9/11/2001. Not because of all of this. I saw this coming a long time ago. And that's why I've been doing the Wells Report. And I find it amazing that I'm doing it at this level, but that's okay. Because I believe that the work that we do here speaks for itself. Let's hope it speaks to lots of people for itself. Let's move on. Let's see. Michelle Larrabee says, happy Friday to everybody. John Beal, wait, are you saying that Dorsey lied to Congress? LOL, yes. The sarcasmometer pegged on that one, John. They omit stories and kill anything bad about Democrats' case in point, Hunter Biden's laptop, or Joe threatening to withhold money if a prosecutor investigating Hunter in Ukraine wasn't fired. Yeah. Jan Thompson drops by. Jan, good to see you again. Martha said, I'm 67 years old. They've been proven liars for most of my life. And then Mike says hi. And so Twitter, owned now by Elon Musk, spilling the beans. And as I've read this, the actual structure that these people had used to censor Americans is monstrous. I said it right before the break. I said, this is monstrous. It's insidious. It's diabolical. Especially in a country that bases most of our experience on freedom of speech and freedom of the press and freedom of religion, all of which under attack by the American left. Especially when you start thinking about the free press, which essentially turned itself over to government stooges. They did all of this just to have a seat at the political table. For what reason? A free press is essential to a free society. If we don't have a free press, and we don't, do we have a free society? When you start thinking about all the surveillance that we deal with, you know, gosh, do you really think they're listening in on us? Siri, are you listening? Sometimes when I ask that question out of the clear blue sky, she says yes. Did I turn that on? No. So just exactly what country do we live in? Am I barking uselessly at the moon when I start talking about the Bill of Rights and free speech and all of that? In other words, I've been warning about us losing our country. Is it too late? This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. More of Twitter 2.0 next. Stay put. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. If you find value in this broadcast, please pass it along to your friends. Please do so. Subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Those matter. So do subscriptions. The more subscriptions that I have, the closer I get to profitability on this broadcast. I believe the broadcast is good enough to be profitable. Do you? If so, help us out. Pass it along. Now, if you'd like to directly involve yourself in the financing of this broadcast, you can. You can go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. Patreon, patreon.com/The Wells Report. $1 or $2 every month would help out a lot. If you'd like to do that, thank you. I'd appreciate it immensely. We're giving you the Twitter Files 2.0 at Barry Weiss, the former New York Times reporter and opinion editor, etc., is doing the work this time around as opposed to Matt Taibbi, who did it before. By the way, he has the next tranche of these that are coming out. In other words, they're tag teaming this, and it's real journalism, and it's worthy of your attention. And we're giving it to you. You can go to Twitter yourself and go to @Barry Weiss, at the @ symbol, the @ symbol, BARIWEISS. It's all right there. And you can read it for yourself, and I suggest you do. We're at number 24 now. Number 24 in this thread. In a direct message with an employee on health, misinformation, privacy, and identity research team, Roth requested more, that's Yale Roth, requested more research to support expanding non-removal policy interventions like disabling engagements and de-amplification/visibility filtering. Yoel Roth. One of the biggest areas I'd love research support on is non-removal policy interventions like disabling engagements and de-amplification visibility filtering. The hypothesis underlying much of what we've implemented is that if exposure to, e.g., misinformation, directly causes harm, we should use remediations that reduce exposure and limit the spread virality of the content. It's a good way to do that by just reducing prevalence overall. We got Jack on board, Jack Dorsey. We got Jack on board with implementing this for civic integrity in the near term, but we're going to need to make a more robust case to get this into our repertoire of policy remediations, especially for other policy domains. So I'd love research's point of view on that. Once again, this guy is just simply anti-American from a standpoint of freedom of speech, the First Amendment. He has no idea what's going on here from a standpoint of what America is and what it is not. All he sees is his power. That's all he sees. He is a political and power sociopath, in my humble opinion. Number 25, Roth wrote, the hypothesis underlying much of what we've implemented is that exposure to, e.g., misinformation directly causes harm. We could use remediations that reduce exposure, limit the spread, virality of the content. It's a good way to do that. Number 26, he added, we got Jack on board with implementing this for civic integrity in the near term, but we're going to need to make a more robust case to get this into our repertoire of policy remediations, especially for other policy domains. Number 27, there is more to come on this story, which was reported by these people and the term and the team at the Free Press. Okay, that's at the FP. Keep up with the unfolding story here on our brand new website, The Free Press, a new media company built on the ideals that were once the bedrock of great journalism. All right. This is number 28. The authors have broad, expanding access to Twitter's files. The only condition we agreed to was that the material would be first be published on Twitter. Number 29. We're just getting started on our reporting. Documents cannot tell the whole story here. A big thank you to everyone who has spoken to us so far. If you are a current or former Twitter employee, we'd love to hear from you. Please write to tips@thefp.com. And then it said, number 30, watch M. Taibbi for the next installment. Okay? At M. Taibbi for the next installment. Okay, so there you go. Now, the news surrounding all of this comes from Facebook to get things started. The second installment of Elon Musk's Twitter files confirmed that Twitter was secretly blacklisting certain users and tweets that did not align with the platform's left-leaning agenda. They talk about Stanford University professor of medicine Dr. Jay Bhattacharya as one of the many platforms of blacklisted people, according to information revealed today, or yesterday rather, by the Free Press reporter Barry Weiss. Bhattacharya was secretly blacklisted because he, quote, argued that COVID lockdowns would harm children and thus was unable to trend on the platform. The medical professor spoke with Laura Ingraham about the revelation on Thursday night. Yeah. On the Ingraham angle, Bhattacharya said the suppression of his voice, which questioned much of Dr. Anthony Fauci's guidance on COVID-19, ultimately harmed data, children, and the American public. He believes he was essentially silenced because the opposing arguments were not strong enough to survive the light of day, which was true. We pointed that out here on this broadcast. If we had an open discussion, Laura, the schools would not have closed in the fall of 2020. If we had an open discussion, the lockdowns would have been lifted much earlier because the data and evidence behind them was so bad. So you see, this all contributed to a miserable page of American history. All of this contributed to this. He stated that open, free, and fair conversation should have been allowed on social media during the pandemic to avoid the harmfulness of the lockdowns and the forced vaccination campaigns. He added that he never once used threatening language toward a person, only Dr. Fauci's thoughts. They've gone way too far. It's one thing to suppress violent threats against people, but they've gone way too far. It's one thing to suppress violent threats against people. On the other hand, you can't just suppress thought because it might be correct. The professor told Ingraham he has no clue who requested that he be on Twitter's blacklist, but he believes very strongly there was government direction in the decision. Bhattacharya said he joined a lawsuit filed by doctors and scientists against the Biden administration over the social media censorship related to COVID-19 information. He said the lawsuit has uncovered tremendous evidence that federal agencies directed social media platforms about who and what to censor. You're kidding me. Every American should be outraged. Yes, you should. And remember, we're only talking about Twitter. What happened at Facebook? What happened at Facebook? What happened at Instagram? Because that's owned by Facebook. What happened at Google? What about all those Google searches? I know personally that there were things that were changed on Google. I know that there were things changed on Google. You know how I know? Because I've got proof. I could do a search from, say, for example, a year ago, and then go back and do the exact same search and get different results. Remember, we're only talking about Twitter here. What about Facebook? What about all of these other platforms? What about Google? That's YouTube. Now remember, I have to be perfectly honest with you. As far as I know, Facebook, YouTube, all of these agencies have treated the Wells Report very fairly. Maybe it's because we're too low on the radar. I don't know. But we've been treated pretty fairly here. There are times, however, when I was extremely concerned about what was going on with my account on Twitter. I have not seen anything personally that says that I was shadow banned or any of these other things, but I do remember putting up tweets and then never being able to find them, except when I looked at my own account. They would be there, but I wouldn't find them anywhere else. I have noticed that has been curtailed a bit, but I remember I had like 2,500 followers, and then all of a sudden I had 2,250. It was overnight. And I was trying to figure out just exactly what was going on there. It's been hovering around there. I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter because I figured that I was being shadow banned. Now, the thing about it is that, this is a small show. But think about it for just a little bit. Think about what it means. Think about not being able to get information that you needed to have. Like from this doctor who said, this is going to screw up our kids. And he was censored for that. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He was censored for that. And once again, I keep saying, well, these are private companies, John David. They can do anything they want to. No, they can't. No, they can't. At least they didn't used to be able to. I used to work for private companies all the time that had FCC licenses. They had to operate in the public interest as public trustees. They had to follow certain levels of ethics and so on. It was all from the Communications Act of 1934, which is probably at least as good as a governmental writ as any of those that ever started this nation. It's that good. You ought to read it. There's some things that are out of date. They talk a little bit about the Nazi Party, for example, but, that was just politics of the day. But when you start thinking about what that actual document meant to the United States, it meant that the news had to be the news. You could opine anytime you wanted to. But you had to make sure that everybody knew that you were opining. I do that to this day. I will report the news, and I will not comment on it except to point out fact and bias, which I tell you that I'm going to do. But when I opine, not only do I often say, this is just my opinion, but a lot of times I'll switch cameras. I'll go to this one. So you have a completely different look. This is the news camera. This is the opinion camera. I have another camera, but I have to paint this room. All this back here, I have to paint all this. I have to paint all this, and I haven't had a chance to paint all this. And I, for some reason, I don't want to. The other camera is a really nice one, and I have to mount it on that wall back there. But I just don't want to mount it and then have to unmount it and then paint and then remount it. Is that stupid? It is stupid, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing here. That's what everybody should be doing. That's what Twitter should be doing. This was a decision I made. I'm not putting myself in league with, say, for example, Elon Musk, but that's what Elon Musk is doing. Elon Musk is making the same kind of decisions that I made in 2001. That I was going to waste your time, not 1 ounce of your time, not 1 second of your time, spewing the news, the propaganda of the day. No, I was just going to tell you what was going on. And that's what Elon Musk is doing. And that's a very, very, very good thing. It's something we need more of. This show is being broadcast right this minute on Facebook. Hopefully, there are people on Facebook that are watching this broadcast right now. Come clean. Expose the censorship. Get on board with what is going to be the next important thing. That is a trustworthy media. Elon Musk is leading the way. Join that parade. Facebook, do it. Put all these people that are anti-American, put them in another space. Let them understand what it's like to have their words and ideas and their political delirium set aside for the sake of the greater good, quote unquote. If you get stuck, if you don't know what to do next, just read the Bill of Rights again. Infuse the Bill of Rights into everything you do. I'd say the same thing to Google, but I think they're just too far gone. I think they're too far gone. Again, that's my opinion. That's why I'm talking to this camera. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. We have lived through years of censorship and anti-American oppression. But we're climbing out of it thanks to Elon Musk. Food for thought. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. There's some other things here that you need to be aware of in this broadcast, this Twitter 2.0, Twitter Files 2.0. According to reporting from Fox News, the wife of James Baker, Twitter's former deputy general counsel and former general counsel for the FBI, who Elon Musk fired on Tuesday of this week following his role in handling the Hunter Biden laptop story, helped register Hillary Clinton voters and was involved in other Democrat activism, according to Post. Fox News Digital discovered Baker's wife, Darcy Cahill, from archived White House documents showing that she and Baker attended a November 1999 event with former President Clinton, who mentioned them by name during his remarks. The pair were further matched through various records, including property and local board documents. The couple also appears together in older pictures in one of her social media accounts. Cahall was actively involved in politics in Tacoma Park, Maryland, where they reside. According to a July 2016 post from the Tacoma Park for Hillary Facebook page, she worked as a co-voter registration leader to rally voters on Clinton's behalf months before Baker was involved with FBI's Russia investigation involving former President Donald Trump. Cahall's Democrat activism, however, extended beyond Clinton. The same election cycle, she supported Democrat Representative Jamie Raskin, who represents Maryland's 8th congressional district that includes part of Montgomery County, where they live. Cahall's name appears in a now-removed 2016 post from Raskin's campaign website, showing that she had signed on as part of the Women for Raskin's team, according to a cached page of the site captured by the Wayback Machine. Additionally, Cahall had thrown her support behind failed Maryland Democrat gubernatorial candidate Tom Perez. In October of 2021, she pushed a small $60 donation to his campaign, according to Maryland campaign finance records. All right, so it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal that she is taking part in America's political activity. That's fine. That is not a problem. And that she is married to James Baker is equally not a problem. But it does tell you just a little bit, at least it might tell you just a little bit about Mr. Baker's political proclivities. And when you are, say, for example, a high counsel for the FBI, maybe keeping your politics in your pocket is a better idea. Did he do that? Apparently not. Apparently not. There was also something else that came out on Bloomberg. Now, I'm not a big believer in Bloomberg. I do not believe that Bloomberg has any kind of real credibility, and that's based on its reporting, not anything else. What's interesting to me is they write this today. They say Elon Musk is giving outside writers unprecedented access to internal Twitter information, instructing the current head of trust and safety to provide screenshots of users' accounts. Screenshots showing internal systems restricted to a relatively small number of people in charge of moderating content were shared by journalist Barry Weiss yesterday. The images carry a watermark, a translucent label indicating they were taken from the employee view of Twitter's trust and safety head, Elijah Irwin. The watermark screenshots taken December 7th, 2022, raised concern about whether Weiss had access to Irwin's internal account, which would also mean access to sensitive information like a user's private messages, according to people with knowledge of Twitter's systems. Well, obviously. See, this is Bloomberg saying, hey, you know what? They've got everything. Exactly. And they're saying that somehow this is a leak. And they're also talking about, Bloomberg is now talking about how this could be dangerous about outside data access. The data belongs to Elon Musk. He can do with it anything. He can do anything he chooses with it. Anything he chooses with it. But this is Bloomberg trying to create problems for Elon Musk. Here's another article from the same day. Sean O'Kane. While Elon Musk is busily overhauling newly acquired Twitter, Tesla is facing increasingly urgent issues and testing the faith of some of its chief executives' biggest fans. Weakening demand in China is forcing the electric car vehicle maker to slow production and delay hiring at its Shanghai factory. Its top executive for that market has been called to help out at its newest plant in Texas, which isn't ramping up as planned. And Tesla's stock, which has lost more than $500 billion in market value this year, is under renewed pressure as Musk's advisors weigh using the billionaire's shares as collateral for new loans to replace Twitter debt. Now, Bloomberg is connected to Wall Street, and they know that negative press has an effect on stock price. And these are two stories that basically are nonsensical, but do add to this mudslinging, hoping that some of it sticks, that we have seen against Elon Musk since he took over Twitter. And now we know why. There's going to be more of this. We've already found out that the FBI was playing politics with America's social media. And while the social media companies themselves may not have any vested interest in any way, shape, or form with the Bill of Rights, free speech, etc., the FBI, on the other hand, they are encumbered by the First Amendment. What does that mean? That means that there are an awful lot of FBI people that are involved in curtailing free speech in the United States. And you know what that is? That's actionable. This is the Wells Report. That's hour number one. See you for hour number two next. All right, my friends. I will be back in just a little bit, okay? So stay where you are. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. What do we do here? We report the news, honestly, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary, but that's not the news. It's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And then we debate. News analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Last hour, we spent time talking about Twitter. And we started talking about how Elon Musk, breaking the typical orthodoxy of what is laughingly referred to as American journalism, by actually publishing truth. And it's amazing how many people are coming out of the woodwork and screaming about it, isn't there? It's just amazing. It's just incredible. Some people here on the chat room, by the way, and you can take part of the debate on this chat room. You can go to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And if you're watching on Rumble and Patreon, this show was broadcast earlier today. We're live from 2 until 5, Monday through Friday, in the Central Time Zone. So what's the big deal if a private company decides to suppress a story they weren't sure about to protect their political leanings? What's the big deal about it? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it at all. Right up to the point where the FBI is advising you what's news and what isn't news. When they start doing that, the FBI is in violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution, and that puts it in a completely different realm, doesn't it? You see, the FBI is bound by the Bill of Rights, something that they've forgotten over the years. But they are bound by the Bill of Rights, and sooner or later, it's going to catch up with them, and probably sooner. Remember, all these people came out of the woodwork to say that the Hunter Biden story wasn't real. It was real. Further, the FBI knew it was real because they had the actual machine in custody. They knew exactly what they were doing. That makes it premeditated. It makes it a premeditated quashing of the First Amendment of the Constitution. People can go to jail for that if you work for the FBI. That's why it matters. That's why it matters. Twitter is not journalism. Well, it depends on your point of view. It certainly wasn't. But you know what? It certainly looks like it now. Certainly looks like it's journalism now. What would be the charges? Violation of civil rights. Violation of civil rights. Violation of constitutional rights. People will go to jail for it because they work for the FBI. There is criminal exposure here. Yep. Really? Remember George Floyd? One of the charges that they popped the cops for was violation of his civil rights. The FBI is just as bound by those rights as those police officers in Minneapolis. Just so you know. All right, so there was amazing political news today. I started laughing. I just started this large belly laugh. This large belly laugh. Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema has decided that she is going to leave the Democrat Party. She's going to be an independent. Yeah. Becoming an independent will not change my work in the Senate, she wrote in the Arizona Republic. We've got that piece for you. It's something that I'm going to read for you here in a little bit. It's a move that could have major implications in the remaining lame duck session when lawmakers will be sprinting on legislation to spare themselves a Christmas at the Capitol. She's sending a shot across the Democrat leadership bow, saying, "I'm still important, I still matter," said Todd Belt, professor and director of the political management program at the George Washington University. Switching parties will have a deeper impact on the remaining days of the current session and her political future than the new Congress, said Belt. He added, it gives her veto power on the omnibus bill. She can extract whatever she wants before Republicans take the House. Sinema is forging a path as a maverick at every turn. I promised Arizonans something different, she said, as she registered as an independent. Sinema already acted independently as a Democrat. Her party switch makes it formal, which had been a feature of her time in the Senate since 2019. For example, she voted with Republicans on taxes, with Democrats on LGBTQ rights, gun control, infrastructure, Trump impeachments, efforts to mitigate COVID, inflation, and more. A day before announcing she had switched her party affiliation to independent, she cheered the passage of her bipartisan Respect for Marriage Act in the House and advancement to President Joe Biden's desk. Sinema's switch to independent comes decades after she started in politics with the Arizona Green Party and voted as a progressive through much of her career. On Friday, today, she joined the ranks of independent Senators Angus King of Maine and Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who caucuses with Democrats. Keeping her committee assignments, she indicated her party switch to independent won't change the balance of power much, other than giving her more political power and swing Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Manchin has been the senator to watch in this Congress, said Belt. Sinema has made herself a new pivot point to watch heading into the new Congress. Sinema's 6-year Senate term is up in 2024. The Democrats will very likely try to primary her. I wonder if they'll be successful. Before switching her party affiliation to independent, she faced a potential 2024 primary challenge from Representative Ruben Gallego, an Arizona Democrat who told MSNBC last month that Sinema did nothing to help Democrat candidates in this year's midterm elections. Leaving the party means that she would not be a part of the Democrat Party, whether or not Gallego decides to run. The primary Sinema Political Action Committee issued a scathing statement. Today, Kyrsten Sinema told us what we've already known for years. She's not a Democrat. She's simply out for herself. For the last year, we've been laying the groundwork to defeat Kyrsten Sinema because Arizonans deserve a senator who cares about them, not special interests. In one way, Sinema made our jobs easier by bowing out of a Democrat primary she knew she couldn't win. Now we'll beat her in the general election with a real Democrat. Sinema has drawn ire from Democrats during Biden's term when her centrist positions have held up or blocked his agenda, including her unwillingness to end the filibuster. She wouldn't tell CNN or Politico whether she's running for re-election. Belt said changing her party affiliation makes her path to victory pretty risky, but not necessarily. Fashioning herself in the maverick as a maverick in the mold of Republican Senator John McCain to represent all Arizona might be a nice ideal, but to really win in electoral politics, you have to pick one team or another. It is, for all intents and purposes, a duopoly. Though Sanders has been able to be reelected as an independent, he has decades of Senate experience and name recognition. Sinema is a freshman senator. They tend to be easier to unseat than someone who has been in office for decades. Sinema's switch marks the first time a U.S. senator has switched parties since April of 2009, when the late Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania switched from Republican to Democrat, claiming the GOP had moved too far to the right. Specter, who was Pennsylvania's longest-serving senator with 30 years in office, lost in the 2010 Democrat primary. The move comes days after an exuberant Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said his Democrat Party's new 51-49 majority in the Senate would make it a lot quicker, swifter, and easier to get things done in the upper chamber. In a statement just before noon today, Schumer was staying positive. We'll maintain our new majority on committees, exercise our subpoena power, and be able to clear nominees without discharge votes. The last is especially important for Biden and Democrat leaders, said Belt, as the president enters the second half of his term with a Republican House that will push him to govern more administratively than legislatively. The White House offered support to Sinema in a statement today and said the working relationship wouldn't change, but it punctuated a week of ups and downs for Biden, who had a crystal clear majority on Tuesday and a murky one by the end of the week. Quote, we understand that Sinema's decision to register as an independent in Arizona does not change the new Democrat majority control of the Senate, and we have every reason to expect that we will continue to work successfully with her, said White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, describing Sinema as a key partner on some of Biden's biggest wins, such as the Inflation Reduction Act and the Respect for Marriage Act. A confident Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota also remained positive on CNN, claiming that Sinema's switch does not take away the victory Democrats have in the Senate majority. She's going to continue to work with us, said Klobuchar. I don't think it's going to greatly change the way the Senate is working right now, but it does change the mood and the messaging. The majority party thought they finally had disproved the narrative of Democrats in disarray, but now they're not. It's another black eye for Democrats who thought the days of Vice President Kamala Harris as a tie-breaking vote were behind them. Sinema's announcement drew mixed reaction from Democrats while also receiving cheers from figures in the Republican Party. Senator Alex Padilla of California said this morning he was a little surprised but not shocked about Sinema's decision to leave the Democrat Party. I don't expect much to be changed, to be honest, he said on MSNBC's Jose Diaz-Balart reports. He's shown that she has an independent streak on how she operates. Padilla said that Sinema's core values, battling climate change, fighting for LGBTQ plus rights, defending reproductive rights, are still progressive. I look forward to continuing to work with her on a lot of these important issues. So she has written an op-ed piece, and it's in the Arizona Republic today. And here's what she says. There's a disconnect between what everyday Americans want and deserve from our politics and what politicians and political parties are offering. I'm privileged to represent Arizonans of all backgrounds and beliefs in the U.S. Senate. I'm honored to travel to every corner of our state listening to your concerns and ideas. While Arizonans don't agree on all the issues, we are united in our values of hard work, common sense, and independence. We make our own decisions using our own judgment, lived experience to form our beliefs. We don't line up to do what we're told, automatically subscribe to whatever positions the national parties dictate, or view every issue through labels that divide us. Each day, Arizonans wake up, work, and live alongside people with different views and experiences, usually without even thinking about partisan politics. Arizonans expect our leaders to follow that example, set aside political games, work together, make progress, then get out of the way so we can build better lives for ourselves and our families. It's no surprise that Washington, D.C. often fails to reflect that expectation. I promised Arizonans something different. Everyday Americans are increasingly left behind by the national party's rigid partisanship, which has hardened in recent years. Pressures in both parties pull leaders to the edges, allowing the loudest, most extreme voices to determine their respective parties' priorities and expecting the rest of us to fall in line. In catering to the fringes, neither party has demonstrated much tolerance for diversity of thought. Bipartisan compromise is seen as a rarely acceptable last resort, rather than the best way to achieve lasting progress. Payback against the opposition party has replaced thoughtful legislation. Americans are told we have two choices, Democrat or Republican, and that they must subscribe wholesale to policy views the parties hold, views that have been pulled further and further toward the extremes. Most Arizonans believe this is a false choice. When I ran for the U.S. House and Senate, I promised Arizonans something different. I pledged to be independent and work with anybody to receive lasting results. I committed I would not demonize people I disagreed with, exchange in name-calling, or get distracted by political drama. This is Kyrsten Sinema as her explainer as to why she left the Democrat Party and is now a registered independent. There's more. We'll have that for you coming up in just a couple of moments. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. Back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Kirsten Sinema has decided to register as an independent in Arizona instead of a Democrat. And she wrote an op-ed piece in the Arizona Republic today to be able to explain it, by the way. And we are giving that reportage to you today. All right. And this is what she said. I promised I would never bend to party pressure. I would stay focused on solving problems and getting things done for everyday Arizonans. My approach is rare in Washington and has upset partisans on both sides. It's also an approach that has delivered lasting results for Arizona. I work proudly with senators in both parties who have similarly rejected political extremes and forged consensus, helping drain some of the poison from today's politics. That includes successful laws I was honored to lead, rebuilding our nation's critical infrastructure, protecting our economic competitiveness, addressing historic drought to help secure our water future, expanding veterans benefits, boosting innovations in small business, protecting marriage access for LGBTQ Americans, strengthening mental health care, and making our communities safer, more vibrant places in which to live and raise families. Because we built support in both parties for these solutions rather than pursuing more extreme party line policies, these laws are lasting solutions. Likely to be overturned by a Congress, result less likely to be overturned by a next Congress, resulting in whipsawing federal policy, greater uncertainty, and deeper division. Americans are more united than the political parties would have us believe. We are shown that a diverse democracy can still function effectively. Arizonans, including many registered as Democrat or Republican, are eager for leaders to focus on common sense solutions rather than party doctrine. But if the loudest, most extreme voice continues to drive each party toward the fringes, and if party leaders stay more focused on energizing their bases than delivering for all Americans, these kinds of lasting legislative successes will become rare. It's no wonder a growing number of Americans are registering as independents. In Arizona, that number often outpaces those registered with either national party. When politicians are more focused on denying the opposition party a victory than improving Americans' lives, the people who lose are everyday Americans. That's why I've joined a growing number of Arizonans who reject party politics by declaring my independence from the broken partisan system in Washington. I registered as an Arizona independent. Like a lot of Arizonans, I have never fit perfectly in either national party. Becoming an independent won't change my work in the Senate. My services to Arizona remain the same. Arizonans who have supported my work expanding jobs and economic opportunity or my opposition to tax hikes that would harm our economic competitiveness should know my focus on these areas will continue. Arizonans who do not share my unwavering view that a woman's health care decision should be between her doctor, and her family should know that should know that will always remain my position. Should know that will always remain my position, as will my belief that LGBTQ Americans should not be denied any opportunity because of who they are or who they love. For those who support my work to secure the southern border, ensure fair, humane treatment for migrants, and permanently protect dreamers who are Americans in all but name, those will also remain my priorities. For Arizonans who supported my work to make healthcare more affordable and accessible, they should know I will be continuing that work, as I did when I helped negotiate a historic law allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices while ensuring robust medical innovation. But if anyone previously supported me because they believed, contrary to my promise, that I would blindly be loyal to a partisan agenda, or for those who believe our state should be represented by partisans who push divisive negative politics, regardless of the impact on the state, then there are sure to be others vying for your support. I offer Arizonans something different. Some partisans believe they own this Senate seat. They don't. This Senate seat doesn't belong to a Democrat or a Republican boss in Washington. It doesn't belong to one party or another, and it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Arizona, which is far too special a place to be defined by extreme partisans and ideologues. It's an honor to represent the state I love so much in the U.S. Senate. While I do, I pledge continue to doing what I promised, to be an independent voice for Arizona. Kirsten Sinema, back with more of the Wells Report in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point it out. We make commentary, not the news, and we debate. Kyrsten Sinema decided to become an independent today. She will probably caucus with the Democrats, and nothing will actually change, although what she will do is she will have a little bit more room to operate outside the strict Democrat Party body politic. This, by the way, has infuriated media pundits and political commentators. And what I want you to do when you listen to this is I want you to listen to the venom. I want you to listen to the venom that's being hurled at Kyrsten Sinema here. Some liberal media pundits and commentators were stunned or not surprised, but still angry this morning after Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema announced she was leaving the Democrat Party and registering as an independent. The news broke days after Democrats celebrated expanding a slim majority in the Senate after winning in Georgia. Fellow independents Angus King of Maine and Bernie Sanders of Vermont caucus with Democrats, and Sinema has said she will not caucus with Republicans. Some Democrats, liberal media anchors, and political commentators erupted with anger and shock to Sinema's decision, including Democrat operative Adam Parkomenko. He fumed, quote, "I see Kyrsten Sinema is still great at being the effing worst," unquote. Wow. Listen to this. Listen to what these people are saying. You know, these are people that have absolutely no problem with Kyrsten Sinema as long as she follows this leftist agenda. But if she does anything outside that, listen to what they say. Left-wing MSNBC host Mehdi Hassan reacted to the news, quote, "In the most shocking, surprising, and unexpected news in modern American political history, Senator Kyrsten Sinema is leaving the Democrat Party, which makes sense because, one, she was never really a Democrat, and two, she can't win a Democrat primary in 2024, so Sinema being Sinema," unquote. Sour grapes much? Former MSNBC host Keith Olbermann, at one point, the greatest sportscaster I ever saw. I called him in Bristol, Connecticut, and told him so. I said, "You're the best I've ever seen." And I explained that I knew what I was talking about because I was a broadcaster. He said, "Thank you." I said, "You're welcome." That was the whole conversation. Olbermann, who previously claimed he dated Kyrsten Sinema, roasted her on Twitter, quote, "You are ethically unfit to continue serving as a United States Senator, manipulative, deceptive, messianic, without principles. I urge you to resign your office immediately." Keith, I have to do it. You know, I like you very much. I do like Keith Olbermann very much, but your politics, man, they're totally gone. And you lost your mind. Anyway, but that being said, all I can tell you is that what would it be like to actually be able to resign instead of getting fired? I'm sorry, I had to say. I just had to say it. I just did. Unethically, you are ethically unfit to continue serving as a United States Senator. Goodness gracious. MSNBC analyst Brittany Packett Cunningham called it, quote, "confirmation that Sinema is the worst," unquote. Far-left activist Charlotte Clymer wrote, quote, "Her own greed and narcissism is her political party," unquote. Wow. Wow. Continuing, Sinema has been planning this move for years. She's been openly moving toward this with every hypocritical, self-serving move she's made, from climate change to the filibuster. This has been the most cynical marketing effort in American politics and the worst kept secret in D.C., said Charlotte Clymer, predicting that she was trying to, at some point, join a Republican national ticket. I don't think so. I do not think so. Sinema has voted reliably with President Biden while in office, however, supporting his agenda 93% of the time. This according to the data website 538. Yeah. Newsweek. The official Newsweek Twitter site, Kyrsten Sinema branded traitor as Democrats rage over her defection. Wow. Obvious point, but Sinema almost certainly was going to draw a primary challenger and was going to have a very tough race at MSNBC anchor Chris Hayes. He also complained that other Democrat senators in Arizona, Mark Kelly, won his race with way less drama. Yeah. It depends on your point of view as to what drama actually is. We don't know what's going on in the mind of Kyrsten Sinema, but sometimes we can look at her and we can ask ourselves, what is she thinking? Who said that? MSNBC anchor Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe this morning. CNN political contributor Van Jones said this, quote, she is less of an independent and more of an enigma, unquote. He also went on to call her, quote, a confounding political presence, unquote. Jones asked, where do you stand and what do you stand against? Then accused her of gumming up the Democrat Party. CNN reporter Melanie Zanona backed up Jones, quote, she likes being called an enigma. She probably relishes in that, unquote. She probably does. I mean, think about this for just a couple of seconds. If you could get to Washington, D.C., with all those people not knowing how you were going to vote, wouldn't that be an advantage? The answer is yeah. Sinema tweeted this morning that she has joined a growing number of Arizonans who reject party politics by declaring independence from the broken partisan political system in Washington and formally registering as an Arizona independent. In an interview with CNN anchor Jake Tapper, Sinema was warned that Democrats were going to call her every name in the book. They're going to call you traitor and ingrate, Tapper said. It wouldn't be the first time she's been insulted for her unorthodox political views. In September, Sinema was labeled, quote, the worst kind of Democrat, unquote, by critics. Sinema similarly defended her decision in an op-ed in the Arizona Republic, which we gave to you just moments ago, arguing she was declaring her independence from the broken partisan system in Washington. When politicians are more focused on denying the opposition party a victory than they are in improving Americans' lives, the people who lose are everyday Americans. That's what she wrote in her op-ed. I understand completely what Ms. Sinema is doing. I do. I understand completely what she's doing. I made a similar decision a while back when I left the Republican Party. I left the Republican Party under circumstances very similar to this, but not necessarily because the Republican Party was getting too far outlandishly crazy politically. I left the Republican Party because they're not a good enough party to lead a great nation. They're losers. They don't fight for America. They negotiate for America on what they consider to be America's behalf. And they miss on both parts of that equation. When Republicans have political power, they don't use it. When they don't have political power, they obfuscate and try to assign responsibility for bad things to their opponents. They are quite literally the dog chasing the sports car down the street. Yap, 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 bark, 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 chase, chase, chase. But you ought to see the look on their face when the sports car stops and says, okay. I've seen it myself. I've seen it from Republicans, strong ones, on the broadcast. This broadcast. When I said, okay, so what's your plan for health care in the United States? We don't have one. Make no mistake, I kind of like that plan. I kind of like the government of the United States not having anything to do with health care, but from a political standpoint, that was stupidly idiotic to not have a plan. It's a simple plan. It truly is. Publish every price for every single medical medical procedure in the entire inventory. We actually know what all those are. There's a coding system that codes everything. They have every possible combination of medical condition, circumstance, etc. All this stuff is called ICD-10 right now. ICD-11 is probably around the corner. But anyway, that being said, they know exactly what these are. All they have to do is assign prices to them. And all the prices of all the healthcare will be driven downward by market pressure, just like everything else. You have no idea. I give you an example. Got a little thing coming up on my knee. Got a little thing I got to get done. Have no idea what it's going to cost. Don't have any idea. It's the only place where you go shopping and have no idea what you're going to pay until after you've already used the product, after you've left the store, and so on and so forth, and somebody sends you a note. Oh, by the way, you spent this much money. Oh, really? How exciting. That should have been their program, but they didn't have one. Why? Because they're not good enough to lead a great nation. The Republican Party is a collection of losers. And this has to do with the fact that people like Mitch McConnell spent decades in the United States Senate as the minority party. And make no mistake, I'm telling you, the Republican Party, especially in the United States Senate, really great at being losers. I mean, they are great at it. They're great at being losers. But I will tell you, I know what Kyrsten Sinema is talking about here. Not for the same reasons, not politically, but because the mainstream parties are not serving we the people. They are serving themselves. And it's just as easy as could possibly be that people who will look at, excuse me, people who will look at the move that Kyrsten Sinema made as self-serving. It's typical. It's low-hanging fruit. But I don't hear that in her voice, and I don't hear that in what she's talking about. I don't even hear that or see it in her actions. What I see is somebody that could have, if she had any of those other motivations to make this move, there are a lot better times for her to do it than this one. Lot better time, lot better opportunities. I think she's sincere. And I think that's good. We'll see what happens. Her seat is up in 2024. Had I any input on what she was doing, even though I disagree with her vehemently in politics, I'd say, goodness sakes, please run. Certainly in the Democrat primary. Would I want her to win the Arizona election? Well, since I don't live in Arizona, it's none of my business. If I did live in Arizona, no, I wouldn't want her to win. But neither would I want some leftist, progressive, Democrat, crazy person to win that seat either. Kyrsten Sinema is going to do just fine. It's not going to mean anything from a standpoint of balance of power in the United States Senate. The senators all know that. But the one thing that I want you to take away from all of this reporting is the horrendous venom coming from the mainstream media, coming from these left-wing apologists, these pundits. You know, these people that would say the horrible things they've said just because Kyrsten Sinema has a different way of going about what she believes her political career should be than what the learned orthodoxy demands that it should be. It literally does take all kinds. E pluribus unum, of many, one. In order to have this country, it does take all of us. But in order for us to have this country to say things like, oh, how terrible this person is because of that political ideology, or so on and so on, it's antithetical to the country that we have. These people honestly believe that this is their nation to do with as they choose, and that is wrong. I applaud Kyrsten Sinema. I understand it probably won't matter much to politics in the United States, but it might matter to the people that she serves in Arizona. And I wouldn't be surprised if in 2024, if she does decide to run again, that she doesn't win that election as an independent. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. There is other daring do in American politics, and it has to do with Speaker Kevin McCarthy, or someone who would wish to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the current leader of the Republican Party, Kevin McCarthy. He is apparently not a completely popular person with regards to the Republican caucus in the House. A right-wing faction is threatening to tank his speakership ambitions. House Leader Kevin McCarthy delivered a promise: "I'll never leave," making it clear he has no problems to drop out of the race, even if the fight goes to many ballots on the floor. McCarthy told CNN, saying that I'll get 218 votes, referring to the votes he'd need to become House Speaker. Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona, a conservative hardliner who is challenging McCarthy to be the most powerful member of Congress, doubled down on his commitment to stop the California Republican scenario. Biggs told CNN yesterday when asked if he would drop out, he goes, "I'm not bluffing. I'm not." With the increasing likelihood the speaker's race could go to multiple ballots, something that hasn't happened since 1923, McCarthy's allies and foes alike are starting to quietly game out the next steps if he can't get the necessary 218 votes on the first round and they move into uncharted territory. McCarthy supporters are vowing to keep voting for him on multiple ballots, and GOP sources said there are early discussions about a floor strategy that for that potential scenario, including whether to recess the House or let the votes keep rolling no matter how long it takes. To prevent that from happening, McCarthy and his team have been engaged in serious talks with a group of conservatives, including over potentially giving them influential committee assignments and more power to drive the legislative process. GOP sources said those negotiations are still early in the process, could ultimately end up giving the group some aspect of what hardliners desperately want: additional power to seek a sitting speaker's ouster with a vote on the floor. That will not happen. That's not going to happen. Asked if he would drop out of the race if he doesn't get 218 votes on the first ballot, Biggs refused to say. "I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals," said Biggs, who lost his conference nomination to become Speaker last month after securing just 31 votes. But in the case of a doomsday scenario, this is CNN copy, so it's obviously just a bit biased. A doomsday scenario, indeed. In the case of a doomsday scenario where neither McCarthy nor Biggs can get 218 votes on January 3rd and neither drops out, some pro-McCarthy Republicans are signaling support for a different approach. Some said that they would be willing to work with Democrats to find a moderate Republican who can get 218 votes to clinch the gavel, and that tells you just about everything you need to know. The Republican Party working with Democrats to agree on a Speaker of the House of Representatives? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I think that would probably be another one of those things that gets people to think, why do I not follow JD's well-reasoned departure from the Republican Party? There is no better. There's just no better way of understanding this. Anyway, so McCarthy's supporters are vowing to keep voting for him on multiple ballots. He is not going to talk about hypotheticals, said Biggs. He lost his conference nomination, but in the doomsday scenario, once again overbroad, some pro-McCarthy Republicans are signaling a different approach. They'd be willing to work with Democrats. That's ridiculous. That's why I am not a Republican. Yeah, we'd work with Democrats. We finally have a majority in the United States House of Representatives, but we'll work with Democrats on a speaker. Great. Our initial plan is to vote for Kevin and let him fight this out repeatedly, but if they think they're going to use this to infinity to drive him out, we're not going to bend to their will, said Representative Don Bacon, a Nebraska Republican. Bacon asked if GOP hardliners don't bend, then would he be willing to work with Democrats to find another more moderate Republican to secure the 218 votes to become Speaker? If a small group refuses to play ball and be a part of the team, then we'll work across the aisle to find an agreeable Republican. But I hope we don't get there. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this ridiculous foolishness from the Republican Party? Quite literally trying to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory? Yeah. There are very significant rules, changes being discussed that would open the House up. That would be transformative, but that would give us the ability to actually legislate and represent our constituents, said Representative Matt Gaetz, a Republican from Florida who said he is a hard no on speakership for McCarthy. And whoever is Speaker is going to have to agree to those rules, I think, and I don't think that person will be Kevin McCarthy because Kevin McCarthy won't have 218 votes. Whoa. Gates added, I think the person who's ultimately going to be the speaker isn't even the candidate yet. Indeed, the small group of Republicans known as the Never Kevin movement are confident that Biggs could not win a majority in the House. They've been trying to recruit a viable alternative and claim several Republicans have privately told them they'd be interested in running if McCarthy drops out. Their goal in voting for Biggs is to show that McCarthy is weak on the first ballot, which they hope would inspire other candidates to jump in. Yeah. I still think that Kevin McCarthy is going to be the Speaker of the House. We will see. Never Kevin, indeed. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. That's hour number 2. Stick around. Hour number 3 is right around the corner. And just like that. Okay. One more, so hang with us. Back in a second. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That's not the news. That's just my opinion. And we debate. We debate the issues. We debate the news. We debate the commentary. We debate the things that are most important in the United States. And that is what we are constantly dealing with on this broadcast. We hope you find value in it. If you do, please support it. We'll tell you how a little bit later on. We've been talking a little bit about the ever-changing political landscape in the United States. That happened last hour. Kyrsten Sinema decided to leave the Democrat Party. She is now a registered independent, and the gnashing of teeth and anger and vitriol and venom and all manner of leftist craziness is on full display today. But it's not just that. As the political food fight in the United States degenerates into an ever more angry, ever more partisan, ever more venomous mess, we have to also point out that some of the greatest results of the aforementioned venomous mess, the House January 6th committee, is continuing to move forward on its one-sided look at whatever it takes to get Donald Trump out of the political landscape. Now, this is being reported by Bloomberg, and Bloomberg is barely a credible news source. So with that in mind, I'm going to continue reporting this. The House January 6th committee, we talked about this before, they were planning on sending out criminal referrals. Apparently, some of those criminal referrals will be against President Donald Trump, his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and 3 other key allies involved in his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, a person familiar with the matter said yesterday. Those referrals are being suggested by a subcommittee of the panel and have not been officially approved by the full committee. They also include unofficial former Trump legal advisor John Eastman, Trump former lawyer and New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark. You know, they most certainly they can certainly make these referrals, but if they honestly believe that they're going to get a criminal referral against Donald Trump or John Eastman or Rudy Giuliani or Jeffrey Clark or any of these people, they're absolutely dreaming. All this is just nasty, mean-spirited, try to damage the reputation of somebody you disagree with politically. It's the absolute dregs of American politics. It's the worst we've seen in our lifetime. American politics used to be a much more bare-knuckle sport back in the day, but this is the first we've ever seen of it. And it's ugly, and it's nasty, and it's divisive. It's hurting the nation. And it gets worse every second. The hyperbole is only matched by the hypocrisy. And both of which are absolutely damaging this nation. Naturally, the person who's been talking about these criminal referrals doesn't want to be identified. Why? Well, because the information has not been yet made public by the panel. Yes, it has. As a matter of fact, I reported it earlier this week. So, what's your name, Bunky? They didn't specify what criminal counts might be referred against President Trump and the other 4. It's not clear whether the others might be targeted for referrals. What are they going to do? Remember, this wonderful cocoon of political charge making comes to a rapid end when you try to make it actual legal assertions. Because suddenly the Fifth and Sixth Amendments start taking over and somebody gets to actually defend themselves. They actually get to confront their accusers. They actually get to do a whole bunch of things that so far these weaselly politicians of both political stripes, by the way, I was trying to figure out how I was going to say that. These weaselly politicians haven't had to deal with yet. So they may make these criminal referrals, but they're not going much farther than that. They're not going much farther than that. And I'm almost positively sure that not even a Washington, D.C. grand jury is going to be able to look at this cobbled up mess, especially in light of what we know from Twitter and elsewhere, and try to actually indict a former president of the United States. These people are overplaying their hand. It's happening again. And it's awful. By the way, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. is going to hear arguments in a closed-door hearing. It's supposed to be going on today about whether to force a representative of Donald J. Trump's presidential office to swear under oath that there are no more classified documents of any kind in Mr. Trump's properties. This, according to two people familiar with the matter. The judge is Beryl Howell, also being asked to decide whether to impose financial penalties or issue a contempt finding if no one from Mr. Trump's office agrees to formally vow that, to the best of their knowledge, all of the classified materials he took from the White House when he left office last year have been returned to the government. So let me see if I got this straight. They want to charge people in the Trumposphere with contempt if they don't certify that there are no more classified documents, and they want to get somebody guilty of contempt if they do say that there are no more classified documents and any others happen to turn up. Remember, Donald Trump's lawyers, his own lawyers, commissioned a search of all the properties to make sure that there wasn't anything left. Okay, this is, once again, the mean-spirited nastiness that I'm watching poison even the judicial branch. The hearing is in federal district court in Washington, is being held at the request of federal prosecutors who asked Judge Howell in recent days to declare Mr. Trump in contempt of court for failing to obey a grand jury subpoena that was issued in May, seeking the return of all classified records in the office's possession. The request by the government came months after frustration with the former president and his lawyers, who have repeatedly made assurances to prosecutors the sensitive material had all been returned, only to find out there was more. No matter what Judge Howell decides, the fact that she has been asked to mull a contempt finding suggests the Justice Department has taken a newly aggressive stance toward Mr. Trump's long-delayed response to the government's efforts to retrieve a trove of sensitive records that he took from the White House to Mar-a-Lago, his private club and residence in Florida. Around Thanksgiving, a team of experts hired by Mr. Trump concluded searches that included other locations: Trump Tower in New York, his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, a storage facility near Mar-a-Lago that was run, by the way. It wasn't just a storage facility, Big Jim's U-Haul and storage. It wasn't that. This was a storage facility that was run by the General Accounting Office. The team discovered at least 2 documents that bore classification markings, prompting lawyers for the former president to immediately notify prosecutors about them. Nonetheless, the discovery contradicted an affidavit that some of Mr. Trump's other lawyers had drafted and signed, saying that they had done a diligent search of his properties, and to the best of their knowledge, no classified material remained in his possession. Those statements aren't mutually exclusive, by the way. That indeed, that the affidavit was contradicted. It can be contradicted even though it was signed, because the people, in the best of their knowledge, said that no more classified material existed. That doesn't mean that they can't be proven wrong in the future. They know that, but they're writing it this way anyway. That's the bias that I keep saying I'm going to point out. The new bid by prosecutors to persuade Judge Howell to use her authority to hold Mr. Trump and his legal team accountable for the return of the materials came weeks after the Justice Department named a special counsel, Jack Smith, to oversee the investigation into whether Mr. Trump had illegally kept national security documents at his private property and obstructed the government's attempts to get them back. Some lawyers who have worked with Mr. Smith's team have said that they were told the Justice Department will no longer pull punches in seeking to enforce court orders or subpoenas. The attestation in June was signed by a lawyer for Mr. Trump named Christina Bobb and drafted by another named Everin Corcoran. When the FBI subsequently searched Mar-a-Lago in August, it found more than 100 additional documents bearing classification markings, all of them very carefully set up for a photo op By who? Well, by the FBI, of course. Clumsy. The initial grand jury subpoenas were issued in May after officials with the National Archives, after nearly a year of attempts, received 15 boxes of materials from Mr. Trump's club at Mar-a-Lago in January and discovered that they contained dozens of classified documents. It's unclear whether Judge Howell will rule from the bench today, reserve judgment, or seek to have the two sides work out their disputes. I'm kind of hoping for the latter, in case you're wondering. I haven't heard anything about that, by the way, but I will keep my eyes open. Let's see, just a second here. Judge Judge Beryl Beryl Howell. Let's see how she's voted or what she's done here. Let's see if she's in the news. Let's go take a look. And no, they're just still hearing the case. All right. They've the DOJ prosecutors and Trump attorneys arrived for the closed door hearing. That was about 40 minutes ago. So it's just going on now. All right. So that is the very latest. You can't have a day of reporting of political intrigue without having Donald Trump involved in some way, shape, or form. And so there you go. Look, the simple case of the matter is this. All right. President Donald Trump is going to force the United States government to deal with executive privilege. They haven't done it yet. There are an awful lot of people that make a whole bunch of brave assertions about what President Trump has done and what President Trump hasn't done. They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And further, the simple case of the matter is that this is uncharted territory. The reason it's been uncharted is because there's always been give and take. That's because there's never been a real political imperative to rid the political process from somebody who is a disruptor before. Donald Trump is most assuredly that. And both sides of the political mill are doing their absolute dead level best to rid themselves of this troublesome patriot. And that is exactly who Donald Trump is. These troublesome patriots that keep screwing things up for everybody else. When I say everybody else, I'm talking about all the totalitarian anti-American thugs that are out there. You know, and if it's not Donald Trump, guess who else it is? My goodness gracious, it's Elon Musk. You know, these people keep showing up. They keep showing up and ruining the absolute brilliance of a new political America based on the old, ineffective, incompetent political America. But for some reason, all we have to do at this point is we just have to get rid of all these people that, you know, keep insisting on the Constitution. Yeah, they keep insisting on the Bill of Rights. We just got to get rid of all those people. Once we get rid of all those people, we'll be able to get this country all worked out. Really, really set on the right track, even though 71% of us believe it's on the wrong track. And they haven't even been able to accomplish anything yet. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. But once again, I am absolutely confident that the people of the United States will indeed do the right thing regarding the greatest country in the history of the human endeavor. After, of course, we've tried everything else. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. You can find us on the chat room that is available to you at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. I want to thank the people that are watching on Twitch and on YouTube and on Facebook. Everybody's here, and we sure do appreciate it. By the way, if you're watching on Rumble or if you're watching on Patreon, this show was recorded earlier for playback just in case you wanted to see it at your particular convenient time. Yeah, so there you go. So when we start talking a little bit about America's political process, it's hard to find people that can cleanly express the obvious. Peggy Noonan tried on the WSJ, the Wall Street Journal opinion page. She tried. What she said was very good. Only the voters can crush Donald Trump. And I'm using that as a metaphor to either apply approval or disapproval to any political candidate for any reason. Peggy Noonan talks about the inevitability of Donald Trump being relegated to history and so on and so forth in nasty terms and so on. You can read the article if you want to. But the point of the matter is what I'd like to deal with at this particular moment. These people who are constantly haranguing Donald Trump, this DOJ that proves itself to be more and more of a political action committee as opposed to an actual federal law enforcement entity, they are damaging themselves with every turn. It's not necessary. It's not necessary to chase Donald Trump. It's not. The same people, the same voters who took a look at what the political parties were offering and chose Donald Trump will now take a look at what the political parties are offering and either choose Donald Trump or not. But all of this really far forward-looking, all of this rumination over an election that is 2 years from now is essentially, and then trying to aspire to say that Donald Trump is irrelevant and so on, that he's the problem, etc. All we have to do is watch what the Republican Party does. They say that Donald Trump was the problem for the Republican Party in the midterms. But you know what the problem was for the Republican Party in the midterms? The Republican Party. The Republican Party. They simply will not fight for whatever candidate they happen to have at the moment. They'll sit back and they'll grouse about how that candidate isn't of sufficient quality for me to support them. Baloney. The Republican Party is comprised of losers. And the Republican Party is happy with it. If they were unhappy with it, they'd do something about it. I mean, if you don't believe me, think about just exactly how many Democrats said garbage things about Jimmy Carter. Arguably, before Joe Biden showed up, Jimmy Carter was the worst president, certainly in our lifetimes, and maybe in the history of the Republic. But did the Democrat Party crap on Jimmy Carter? No. They talked about what a great human being he was when he started doing Habitat for Humanity. The Republican Party can't even elect a Speaker of the House after finally getting a majority. And look at what the Republican Party is doing with their last Republican president. The Republican Party truly and verily sucks. They are awful. They are unworthy of your support. I made the decision to stop supporting them. I wonder if you will as well. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. From time to time, we have had the people from Project Veritas join us on the Wells Report. And the reason that we do that is because Project Veritas is, while I have a problem with their particular use of hidden camera interviews, the fact that they have uncovered unbelievable facts, things that were not supposed to be discussed by people who cynically believe that they are above the judgment of the people of the United States, they've been valuable. You know, from a standpoint of actual journalistic ethics, et cetera, well, you know, there's a discussion to be had by that. But I have had the people from Project Veritas on this broadcast, and I will again, because they do important work. One of the things that we have seen in one of the unintended consequences of the pursuit of liberal politics or progressive politics on the part of the people of the United States through their votes, the unintended consequences are crazy people that are essentially insinuating themselves on our society. And what happened is that one of these people happens to be the dean of a prestigious private school in Chicago. And he was discussing how during LGBT Pride Month, Memorial Day, Pride Month, I'll let that sit with you as you see fit. Dean Joe Bruno was talking about how he had people from the LGBTQ plus community in to discuss their particular contributions to society to his students. Now, his students are young. They're children. We do a Pride Week every year. I had our LGBTQ plus health center come in. Okay. And what did they talk about? Well, in case you're wondering, the Parker school that they're talking about, the cost of enrollment at the institution ranges from just over $37,000 a year for junior kindergarten up to $42,000 a year for grade 12. So these are children that they're talking to here. And this was what they were talking about.
I had like our LGBTQ plus health center come in. They were passing around butt plugs and dildos to my students, talking about queer sex, using lube versus using spit.
Meet Joe Bruno, Dean of Students at the prestigious Francis W. Parker Private School in Chicago, which happens to charge $40,000 per student.
They're just like passing around dildos, butt plugs. The kids are just playing with them. They're like, how does this butt plug work? How does this work? That's a really cool part of my job.
Parents might be stunned to learn that Bruno's version of love and acceptance means handing out sex toys to underage students.
So I've been the dean for 4 years. During Pride, we do a Pride Week every year. And I had like our LGBTQ plus health center come in. They were passing around butt plugs and dildos to my students, talking about queer sex, using lube versus using spit.
Who is this?
This is an LGBTQ plus health center came in to talk to my high school students. They're just like passing around dildos, butt plugs. The kids are just playing with them. They're looking at them.
In the school?
In a classroom.
Wow.
Yeah. While I'm sitting there. Then we had a drag queen come in, pass out cookies and brownies and do photos.
That's so amazing. And everybody's cool with that, like the butt plugs and the dildos. Nobody complains.
No.
I mean, if the parents found out, would they?
No. It's queer sex. This is the drag queen that came in.
What's her name?
Alexis Bevels.
Alexis Devil.
And just hung out in my classroom.
And was there?
Or hung out in my office.
You have so much freedom. So much wiggle room.
So much freedom. So much money.
I mean, having
To do stuff.
trustees are okay with that too? They don't know.
They would. It's like I wouldn't even run it by them. Like, why would I run it by them? They'd be like, "Oh my God, that's wonderful."
Like,
Yeah.
how old were the kids with the classroom?
14, 18. They're like, how does this work? How do we do, like, how does this work?
Right.
So yeah, that's a really like cool part of my job is I don't have to worry about stuff like that.
So it's not like it's a big secret. Anyway, in case you're wondering, this, by the way, from National Review. A prestigious private school in Chicago, Francis W. Parker, defended Dean of Students Joe Bruno following the release of a video in which he said the school's LGBTQ sex education program includes passing around sex toys and instructing students on how to use them. During Pride, we do a Pride Week every year. I had our LGBTQ plus health center come in. They were passing around butt plugs and dildos to my students, talking about queer sex, using lube versus spit. Bruno, who has been in his current role for 4 years, added to that students asked him, how does it work? How do we, like, et cetera, et cetera. Bruno reportedly was not aware his statements were being recorded at the time by Project Veritas, an American organization known for making similar undercover videos. The outfit has been successfully sued by an organization over its tactics. One organization. The release of the undercover video apparently has not shaken Francis W. Parker School's faith in Bruno. The school defended him in a statement released yesterday. Quote, he was filmed without his knowledge or permission, while describing one example of our inclusive LGBTQ plus affirming and comprehensive approach to sex education. Veritas deceptively edited the video with malicious intent. First of all, he wasn't filmed. He wasn't even videotaped. He was recorded. There's no more film. There's no more videotape. You're acting like your parents. Veritas deceptively edited the video with malicious intent. Well, okay, that's their opinion. According to the outlet, the statement also said Parker administrators and the Parker Board of Trustees support Parker's programming, the strength and inclusivity of our class curriculum, and the dedicated and talented faculty and staff that teach it. The revelations have prompted the school to offer mental health check-ins for students. Why? I mean, if this is all wonderful and everything, why would they need mental health check-ins? During the surreptitious video recording released by Project Veritas, the interviewer off camera tells Bruno, you have so much freedom, so much wiggle room, to which Bruno responds, so much freedom, so much money to do stuff. According to Parker's tuition and fees website section, cost of enrollment at the institution ranges from just over $37,000 a year for junior kindergarten to $42,000 a year for grade 12. You see, it's not sex education. It's not how reproductive science works. It's having sex education, which is different than sex education. I don't know why any parent would have their children subjected to any of this. But in what universe is this necessary? I mean, what are they doing here? What is the actual reason? Why would you even broach the subject? Regardless of what kind of sex you're talking about, in whose world is teaching kids 14 through 18 how to have sex? In what world does that correlate with anything close to being responsible? In fact, I know this is probably archaic, but there used to be a law called contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Can someone explain to me where that law went? Because it's obviously gone a long way, and it obviously needs to make a comeback. Why in heaven's name would any of this actually be happening? Well, I'll tell you why. Because this is an investment. This is an investment by and you can call these people whatever you want to. I'm just going to say the American left. It's probably a catch-all, probably not necessarily accurate, but let's just assume that it's the American left. These are the same people that get all upset and angry when people say, my goodness gracious, you're groomers. Well, talking about how to have sex with children, what else would that be aside from grooming? I mean, how is a teacher supposed to respond? Well, gosh, how do you use this thing? How do you use this thing? Well, what's he supposed to say? I mean, did they go ahead and just explain it? And if they're explaining that to a 14-year-old, just exactly what is that if not grooming? You know, when they started coming back, when they started blasting people for calling these people groomers and they started ridiculing them, I realized that what had happened is that they had indeed struck a nerve. You know, when you nail someone of this particular ilk, let's call it the left, you know when you've nailed them, because if they come back at you and start talking about how intolerant you are, then you know that they believe you. You know, talk about these wonderful, tolerant people that demand tolerance of you. Just all you got to do is look at the way they treated Kyrsten Sinema today when she decided that she was going to become an independent and leave the Democrat Party. Those are those wonderfully tolerant people that we've heard so much about. These virtue signaling people. I don't know who they're signaling virtue to. But you know what it looks like to me? It looks like to me that there are an awful lot of educators in these United States that are doing their absolute dead level best to deliver an entire generation of fresh dates to the LGBTQ plus community. And you know what? I would really like to know why that's not true. I would really like to have somebody from that particular community call me on the telephone and tell me why that is not true. Why these visits of drag queens to schools and all of this how to have sex education as opposed to reproductive sexual education. What is that if not to deliver a whole bunch of curious sex objects to the LGBTQ plus community? And the only rule I have is that you can't attack me for asking the question. You have to answer it. You have to answer it on its merits. And I bet you they can't do it. I mean, can you come up with an answer? Can you come up with an answer that doesn't attack me to the question, honestly, is this agenda solely to deliver a new generation of curious dates for the LGBTQ plus community? Yes or no? And why? This is thoroughly disturbing. Yeah, it is thoroughly disturbing on every possible level. These are the same people that are trying to convince our kids that little boys are not little boys, but they're actually little girls, but they're actually little boys. And maybe what you should do is take these pills to keep you from having to actually make a decision for a while until you're older, so we can get the laws changed so that you can destroy your bodies for the sake of our political agenda. I mean, once again, all I'm asking is that you please, by all means, don't tell me why that's a bad question. Answer it. Don't try to slam me for asking what is a perfectly logical question. In case you're actually, not that you've asked, but in case somebody's actually interested in my motivation, you know what my motivation is? My motivation is to actually get you to answer the question. That's it. I want you to explain it to the American people, mom and pop America with their little kids. And I want you to explain just exactly why it is that what you're teaching them is not designed to deliver a whole bunch of new dates to the LGBTQ plus community. Can't do it. You know why? Because in my humble opinion, all of this is to deliver a whole bunch of brand new dates to the LGBTQ plus community. What else could it possibly be? Boy, I sure would like to have an answer to that question, too. You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Somebody's already pointed out that I forgot to wear a flannel shirt today. I had a doctor's appointment today, and it required this rather simple wardrobe that I am dressed in at this particular moment. I'm not going to explain anything beyond that. Okay, just let your own filthy mind take you wherever you want to go. By the way, it was nothing juicy like that. It had nothing to do with this. So, Brittany Griner is home. She flew into the United States last night. She is currently on a United States military base, and she is in a process of decompression, which I completely and totally approve of. She's going to get medical checkups, et cetera, make sure she's okay. She's going to get whatever treatment she needs. Including psychological treatment, which I assure you she needs. There is no doubt about it. I can tell you, having been taken away from hearth and home and doing something, in my case, completely voluntary, that it changed my life, changed me. And something that I used to not agree with, I wholeheartedly agree with at this particular moment, based on hard experience from my own experience in this. So she is going to take the next couple of weeks and work herself through getting back into America, which, once again, I totally approve of. Paul Whelan, on the other hand, is still in Russia and still in their custody for what is apparently a bogus charge of espionage. CNN published a kind of a story about why Paul Whelan is still there and Brittany Griner is here. And I'm going to share that with you. Russia refused to release Paul Whelan alongside Brittany Griner unless a former colonel from Russia's domestic spy organization currently in German custody was also released as a part of any prisoner swap. This, according to U.S. officials. Even as the U.S. offered up the names of several other Russian prisoners in U.S. custody they'd be willing to trade, the U.S. was unable to deliver on the release of ex-Colonel Vadim Krasikov because he is serving out a life sentence in Germany for murder. This is an exclusive from CNN. They first reported in August the Russians had requested that Krasikov be released along with Viktor Bout, a Russian arms dealer who was serving a 25-year sentence in the United States in exchange for Whelan and Griner. U.S. officials made quiet inquiries to the Germans whether they might be willing to include Krasikov in the trade, according to a senior government source. Ultimately, the U.S. was not able to secure the release of Krasikov. The German government was not willing to seriously consider including him, a man who assassinated a Georgian citizen in broad daylight in Berlin in 2019. They weren't planning on letting him go for any reason. The U.S. made several other offers to the Russians, sources said, to try to get them to agree to include Whelan in the swap. Among the names floated was Alexander Vinnik, a Russian national extradited to the U.S. in August on allegations of money laundering, hacking, and extortion. U.S. also offered to trade Roman Seleznev, a convicted Russian cyber criminal currently serving a 14-year sentence in the U.S. A lawyer for Seleznev did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Frederic Belot, a lawyer who represented Vinnik in France before his extradition to the U.S., told CNN today he was not aware of any current discussions between Moscow and Washington over including Vinnik in a potential prisoner swap. But Belot said he could see Vinnik being part of a prisoner swap negotiation in the future. They, Vinnik and Whelan, made part of the possible candidates for the make part of the possible candidates for the next swap, said Belot. Since Vinnik's extradition to the U.S. in August, Belot appealed directly to the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to help secure Vinnik's release from U.S. custody. But ultimately, the Russians indicated they'd only be willing to trade someone they considered to be a spy. Whelan, who was convicted on espionage charges in 2019 for one of Russia's own spies. In this particular case, Krasikov. The National Security Council declined to comment. A senior Biden administration official acknowledged to CNN Thursday the Russian side repeatedly demanded someone not even in U.S. custody, even as the U.S. made a number of different proposals. In the end, Russians kept asking for the same thing the U.S. simply could not deliver on. We've shown an openness to ask about that, which is actually available to us and gotten only in response to demand for something that is not available to us, said the official, reiterating that the Russians refused what had been offered to secure the release of Whelan. And so, while it doesn't make it any better, while there are many people that are saying a professional basketball player as opposed to a United States Marine, that may help a little bit. And once again, CNN did some first-rate journalism on that. I can only wonder if it's true. It does make sense. That would be a way for Russia to do that. But I find it very interesting that they'd be willing to actually name their guy, Krasikov, as a spy. That's interesting. Is there any good news today? I'm thinking about starting to drink after listening to this hour. Gary, I can assure you that as soon as this 15 seconds is over with, that I will indeed be doing exactly what you suggest. And I suggest you follow your own advice too. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back on Monday if I sober up in time. This has been the Wells Report. Take care. Oh my. It was a week, huh? Man. All right then. Like I said, there's a drink with my name on it. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to have a margarita. J. Randall DuPape's going to have a bourbon. I've got some of that too. That sounds good too. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, but I haven't had any alcohol for a couple of weeks. So I think I'm going to break that string. And I hope that you're having, yes, by the way, yesterday, in case you're wondering, yesterday was really good. Actually, this has been I think that's my 5th or 6th live gig since I started playing drums in public again. And this one was the least sucky. I only had two real problems. One, my bass drum started crawling away from me in the middle of one song because I was being overly exuberant with my bass foot, and the drum started running away. So I had to stop in the middle and pull the drum back. That sucked. And then there was just one time where I was sitting around and I relaxed for a moment and forgot what I was doing, which happens. And but those were the only times that was an issue. Otherwise, I played pretty well. Not everything was perfect, but it was good. So next Thursday, we'll be back there again. The TBB, the Traditional Blues Band, yours truly playing the drums at the Dream Tacos in Bedford, Texas. If you hate that kick drum creep, me too. By the way, in case you're wondering, I've got these Drum Workshop pedals that I use. They're okay. They're not as good as my Speed King. Remember the Speed King, Ludwig Speed King pedal? God, that was a great pedal. Man, I love that thing. Anyway, the thing about it is that they have these little screws that screw down into whatever you're sitting on. I have a carpet that I use. And so I'm going to try to use those next time. I think they'll probably work. But I have, this is just my little bop kit, so I have this little bitty drum. So it's just not quite heavy enough. So anyway, God bless all y'all. Take good care. Have a wonderful weekend. And I will see you again on Monday for another edition of what we do here called The Wells Report. God bless you and yours. Have a great week.